Hi everyone and welcome to my channel and to this tiny little kitten demo in soft pastel. I hope that you enjoy this short time lapse. If you do, then please do subscribe to me here on YouTube and check out some of my other playlists where I've got lots of real-time content too. This real-time tutorial will be released over on Patreon, but I hope that you enjoy this. I'm working on the brown colour of pastel matte paper, and it's a very quick background. You can see that the background in the photo reference is a little different, and I decided to just go for something very plain. But even in going for something plain, you can add a little bit of interest to it with a couple of different lighter tints. And now the first thing that I do on the kitten is a very useful blocking in exercise. So this is how I build up the textures and the colours of fur. And because this is such a tiny painting, I decided to do this first dark layer right across the whole kitten. So sometimes with bigger work, I tend to work from the top down, more finishing off certain areas before moving on to the next. But in this case, I decided to block in all of the dark brown and the black, harder pastel that I'm using. And that creates a wonderful dark base to start bringing in my colours on top of. So I make all of these little marks, and then, as you'll see now, I give that all a good blend into the paper. So it feels like I lost a lot of the definition of the marks that I spent some time making. And that is kind of the idea. I like my lower layers to go a little bit more fuzzy and soft. And I can always come back in and add more definition. Now I'm working around the outer edges of the kitten. That's where it is softness overload. And I'll come back to these edges later and do even more to them. But for now, I'm just using the pastel pencil a little bit here as well, and dragging some of that pigment out, making those finer little marks. And what I'm also doing a lot of is blending. If you can just catch a glimpse of me doing bits of blending after I've added the marks, and then all of a sudden those marks get knocked back into the mix a little bit and softened, and the whole thing starts to take on a much more fuzzy, fur-like effect. And when you're painting a kitten especially, I think this is why I've been painting a few kittens recently, because they are about as soft as it comes. And so this is a great one to practice getting that lovely softness when you're painting animals. So you notice when I add the marks onto the paper, and you'll see especially with the lighter colours when I start to bring those in, there is a slight scratchy texture to the mark, and that's just the pastel running across the surface of the paper. And with pastel matte paper, it's pretty smooth actually, but it's still got some texture there. And sometimes you want to make use of that. So there are times when I'm painting something and I want the texture of the paper to play a part. But in the case of fur, it's me who wants to create the texture here. I want something really soft. And often if I'm using velour paper, it is quite soft. And that's, I think, why it lends itself so well to painting fur. Whereas with pastel matte, it is a little bit harder. It's less soft than velour, obviously. So you've got to do a little bit extra just to soften the effect. And that's where it's just a light blend with my fingertip after I apply many of the marks. Not all of them. Some of the marks that I add on the very top layer, for example, where I want the most amount of definition, I might not blend them at all, or maybe they just get a very slight tap from my fingertip, so I'm not really rubbing it in a direction. Just even tapping it on this paper sometimes adds a little bit of soft fuzziness to the mark and takes away the sometimes harsh edge that your mark can have depending on what paper you're using. I also decided to have a little bit of a play with colour in this one. It's not such a colourful reference, I couldn't really see a lot of the colours that I'm using. But I suppose I was trying to demo in this little piece how you can take some artistic license with the colour and still come out with something that looks like the photo reference. And I think because this one wasn't a portrait for anyone in particular, I'm really just painting a kitten here. This is actually a little kitten from the shelter where I volunteer. So my phone is filled with photos like this. We use them to promote the kittens and find homes for them, well, the adult cats too. And this little one did find a home, so she is one of the success stories from the shelter. And it's probably easy to imagine that the younger cats and the ones who are as cute as this tend to get snapped up quickly. It's always the adult cats or the cats with some kind of special requirements who get left behind and overlooked. So this little one found a home quite easily. So it's fun for me to make use of some of the photo reference that I take in the shelter. That's why I've painted quite a few cats recently. And a bit like with dogs, they're just a great animal to study if you want to paint all sorts of animals, because with dogs and cats, just look at the variety of colours, textures, length of fur, different patterns. You really cover all the bases with fur. I've learned so much over the years just from doing pet portraits. So little bits of highlight going on. Each brighter colour that comes in really lifts the image. And this is one of the reasons I love working from dark to light in soft pastel. You can see with the unison pastels that I'm using, they go on so solidly over the top of the darker layers, so you can really create that dark contrast in your lower layers and trust that your lighter colours will apply nicely over the top of that later. To a certain extent, it is possible to completely overload the paper with dark colours, and then you will find it a little trickier, but you can see how dark I've gone on the body here, but not with a great amount of pigment, I have to say. Very thin layers, and then blending it into the paper, really mixing the colours, softening the whole effect. And now I can start to add some definition and highlights on the front of the chest, around the neck. So I did try to inject a bit more colour into this one just for some fun. And I'll talk about that a lot throughout the real-time tutorial, which will be coming out on Patreon very soon. I do try to release as much real-time content here on YouTube as well, but it really is the support that I get on my Patreon channel that's funding all of these videos, so unfortunately I can't release them all here in real time. My most recent one was a study of a hand playing guitar. That entire tutorial is up on my YouTube channel for you to work along with. I've also got lots of other animals here, including some cats. So do be sure to check out my real-time videos here and my other playlists, because I've got lots of videos all about colour theory, lots of general things about soft pastel, so it's not all time-lapse videos. But I've got to admit that I enjoy making the time-lapse videos. This is like a treat for me at the end of a tough task in filming something from beginning to end. And especially with the bigger paintings, a bit of a marathon with that too. So for me to check out the time-lapse video at the end is often why I do them, because it's a nice shorter video for me to make when all of my tutorials are quite laborious to make as well. So I really enjoy making the little time lapses, and I hope that you enjoy seeing them. I always try to add some useful information in there. And the final thing to go on now is some whiskers. I'm using a white General's pencil here. This is number 4414 if you're interested. That's a great white pencil. So finishing touches. This was an extremely fun little demo to work on at just 2.5 hours. So do come and check it out on Patreon if you'd like to work along with me. But thank you so much for watching here. And until next time, happy pasteling.